5 two-story pavilions, clustered around an open courtyard, house-changing exhibitions and the J. Paul Getty Museum's expanding permanent collections of pre-20th century European paintings, drawings, illuminated manuscripts, sculpture, decorative arts, and 19th, 20th and 21st century photographs gathered internationally. The Getty Center offers gallery talks, lectures, films, concerts, family programs, interactive media, and art demonstrations. Visitors can obtain free audio guides, pick up a map, and view a 10-minute orientation film in the museum's entrance hall. Maps and audio guides are available in Spanish, Italian, French, German, Portuguese, Mandarin Chinese, Korean, Japanese, and Russian, in addition to English.
We're going into the North Pavilion. The North Pavilion is Renaissance art. So the oldest art at the Getty Center is in the gallery to your right. As you walk through, you'll see all these beautiful gold altarpieces. We're not going in there, but take a look as you walk by. Okay, so we're going to start with this painting here. I have to tell you that school groups get priority, so we have to keep dodging them. So first-time visitors, you don't know that we don't really like to lecture at the Getty. We like to have an interaction with the visitors, so we want you to participate. And could you just stay this side of the line? That's about 18 inches. Perfect. Thank you. So what do you think is being represented here? The most common answer I get is bacon. Bacon. I've also had banana splits, melting ice cream. So the artist is Roy Lichtenstein. This was done in the 1970s. And it's kind of unusual for it to be inside the museum because J. Paul Getty did not like 20th century art. Basically, he wanted his collection to end at 1899. But this was donated to the museum by Ray Stark, a Hollywood producer, as is all the 20th century sculpture you see outside the museum. And I think they moved it in here because the colors would be damaged by the sun. And it represents painting, brushstrokes. So the whole second floor is painting. So the title of this painting is Return from War, Mars Disarmed by Venus. So she is maybe taking off his helmet. These figures are associated with Venus. These have his shield. This one is untying his boot. And those two are taking his sword belt. Okay? So Mars disarmed by Venus. So this was commissioned by the Viceroy from Spain. So they had been having a civil war, another civil war, actually, between Spain and the Netherlands. So at this period of time, Spain controlled most of Europe. And the Netherlands wanted to be free. And they had been fighting for 30 years, and they finally have a truce. So the Viceroy commissioned this painting in honor of the truth and the hope that the peace will last forever, right?
first of all, that we take a brief oversight of what we're seeing up here. Richard Meyer is the architect who's done the buildings up here, the center. You can see the architecture here is very regimented. I like to think of this as a postmodern neoclassic mountaintop castle, an acropolis, if you will. But we can also see that, for instance, the landscape is very responsive to the hardscape. We see that walkway there, and it kind of tells you where you need to put a bush. It kind of is very responsive to the building itself. Look at this Roman aqueduct that's happening here. I had somebody on the tour pointed out they thought this fountain reminded them of a Roman aqueduct, which I love that. Water, of course, is a source of life. We need that for our mountaintop village. But let's see where this fountain leads. So it's great that the water comes down here and we've got that soft sound that happens in there. And the first thing we do is we crane our neck to see where that water's going because we're intrigued by that. And we'll go down into the garden and follow where that is. We can again see where the landscape is very responsive to the hardscape. So it's very regimented. These trees are all in a line, very neoclassic and presented that way. But it's certainly different than what we're going to experience down below. Let's go down the stairs. And now we can see where that water came. Isn't it great? It's a different view down here. To start out, we have this general overall view here through a grove of London plane sycamores. Then down the middle, we have these stones here. Now the stones are kind of great too, because this Kennesaw stone here, you've got these stones balanced on top of there. And then we have the plantings over here with this nice texture. We've got some succulents and things in this area. And even these plants, the light that's hitting these plants in the distance, you get this bright green mohawk look to them. The colors in here, grays, greens, whites. Now from this area, it's interesting as well. These sculptures we're looking at, this is actually a site-specific sculpture, if you will. But we start out with this walkway here, and it's also got kind of a chevron pattern into there. So instinctively, it makes me want to go into that path down there, looking at this, the squareness of this, which of course in the summer there's a lot more leaves and such, but the squareness here, the squareness of the buildings, even though these people were not necessarily seeing the same vision, I think being a site specific, you cannot deny the relation between these spaces here. I also like to think of this as walking into a sculpture or walking into a painting. You get to walk into this painting. How cool is that? Let's take the path down here. So I love this little perch here. I usually stop here for a second and take a look at where we are. Right, so we're walking inside of the sculpture. Now the light's coming from outside and dappling through all of these trees here. We look back at these plants that we were just experiencing and look at how much different they look with the light in their face rather than lit from behind. It's the largest piece of art on the Getty campus. It actually has an ascension number, so that's of interest. Then we'll also look at the ground here. We've got this teak deck here that has that same geometry in there pulling us down there. We have the Corten steel planters here. We have some bronze railways in here, stone, sound, water, plants, but the light and the shadows that are created in this space. So in this winter time, we get a lot of shadows in there, modern art, shadow happening. And then of course in the summertime, when we get that shade, but we get all this continues to change and that sense of discovery. So look at how we feel we're in this little protected environment. Now, as well, Robert Irwin was a swing dancer. So when you're swing dancing with your friend, you grab them by the hand, you swing them through, you zip them back, you change direction. So I love also that instinctively we come through the space and we continue to change direction. And there's a kineticism, right? So we had seen those stones originally and it felt like something was about to happen. And now look at the stones here. Looks like something happened. So these are all broken up. We have this beautiful flat piece here with the water that cascades over it and reflects back. We have this artfully placed stone here. I'm sure there was some discussion as to which stone and where. And then this flat piece back there. And again, boy, talk about modern art. Boom, there I am, right? So this space in here is kind of amazing. You know when you're going down a stream and it looks like the water pools up into that little area? They say that's where the good fishing is, right? The fish like to hang out there and do all that stuff. So even when I sit on the bench right here and my feet aren't constricted, I can just hang out here and feel the roundness, place of decision making. My eye doesn't stick in a corner somewhere. The Corten steel planters are so tall, I'm not looking down at my feet anymore at those little plants. I actually have this dichondra like right up here in my face, and it becomes really personal between me and the plants, and how amazing that is. Even that changes for us along the way. We have some jelly bean succulents happening up here, like a little box. And here's another interesting thing. Quite often we go to a botanical garden and you'll see a plant and there's a name next to it. You write down the name, you try to order it, and do all that stuff, right? But the interesting thing about this, Robert Irwin thought that if you have a plaque down here, you're reading the plaque, you're not interacting with the plant. So for me, it becomes, oh, look at the purple plant. It becomes, oh, look at that plant. Although I know some of these names, it's very interesting because you're having that experience with the plant, and it becomes like having a conversation with someone whose name you don't know. It's that person that held the door open for you. It's that person that reached something off a shelf for you. We're in Los Angeles, maybe it's the person that cut you off in traffic. It's still a conversation. I don't know. But I love this space here as well because it's kind of open-ended and not so defined that I can't have an experience. From here we can see this diamondia, this rubbery shaped ground covering here. It's such an odd feeling. I'm very tactile. I like to pet my plants. And this one is just a very interesting diamondia. Some people ask me, what's the best day to be at the Getty? I always say today. The colors, right? This red kinnikinnick plant is so alluring to me. So now it's mostly reds and greens, which is interesting. Again, ever changing, never less than whole. We have bistro chairs here, invited to move them around. Be in the sun, be in the shade, be with a friend, be by yourself. We then have these bougainvillea arbors that are here. These are made out of Corten steel. Corten steel is usually used to in concrete, to use as a foundation and to help strengthen a form for concrete. But on these we have bougainvillea growing. Now the beautiful thing about these bougainvillea is they create this space, and somebody on the tour thought they would share with me they felt like sheaves of wheat gathering, abundance, breaking bread. I said, that's really an interesting concept. I love this sense of community. Now, when you're in a gallery, quite often you'll see a sculpture, and they don't just leave the sculpture sitting on the floor, they put it on a pedestal. And so when I think of these as a pedestal, and perhaps the Getty itself as a piece of art sitting on top of this pedestal, it kind of plays with my depth perception here, but reminds me there's a conversation between the garden and its surroundings here.